Okay, we are recording. So, good evening. Oh, just make sure good evening. Hello, everyone. And welcome to Weekly Dharma Gathering. My name is Shante Paradigm Smalls, and I'm one of the co-founder and curator. I am the curator of Weekly Dharma Gathering, and I also host every once in a while this weekly live gathering, which we also record. Tonight, we're really fortunate to have be led by Adriana DiFazio, who is also a co-host and co-founder of Weekly Dharma Gathering, and just an all-around amazing human being. And Adriana's talk tonight is titled Dharma as Lifestyle, Expanding Our Path. So the format of tonight, if you're joining us live, is that Adriana will lead us through a guided meditation, then a Dharma talk or a talk about Dharma Buddhist principles related to life, and then we'll close with a Q&A. But I also want to say, please feel free to place your questions if you're joining us live in the chat box anytime during tonight's session. You don't have to wait until the end. And if you're joining us, recorded, sit back, relax, enjoy the meditation, enjoy the Dharma talk, and enjoy the Q&A. So just a reminder that for those who are joining us live, that tonight's session will be recorded. So if you prefer not to be seen, you can please, you can turn off or mute your camera feature. You can just press the stop video on the bottom. Please note that you will also be recorded when asking a question. And the recording of tonight's gathering will be accessible within 48 hours via your purchase products on Vimeo's Weekly Dharma Gathering account, and you'll receive an email notice once it's posted. So here is Adriana DiFazio's bio. Adriana DiFazio is a New York-based meditation instructor, writer, and speaker. She started meditating as a student, an undergraduate at Barnard College in 2012 within the Shambhala Buddhist tradition, and helped found Exuberancy, a national office wellness company between 2015 and 2018. An entrepreneur at heart, she is also one of the founders of Seeds of Karma, Weekly Dharma Gathering, and Pepino's Pickles. So Adriana has a lot going on. Adriana graduated from Mindful's 300-hour meditation teacher training program in 2006, and the Mukpo Institute, a 3-month retreat program in 2018. So please help me welcome Adriana DiFazio. Please teach us.
Hi, everyone. Yay. Shante, thank you so much for hosting and introducing me, and also inviting me to speak. And lead this weekly Dharma gathering this week. It's been fun being on the other side of this project for the past, how long now? I guess since February 2019. And so it's cool to be able to offer something in a Dharma capacity as well. So we'll start off today with a guided meditation, but before we do so, I just wanted to say a little bit about this theme, the title of today's talk, or Dharma Gathering, Dharma as Lifestyle, Expanding Our Path. So when I was thinking of what I wanted to speak about tonight, a big part of it was this idea of how our everyday lifestyle choices can really become a bigger part of the way we consider our spiritual development and contemplation, and has just been a really big theme for myself personally over the past year in regards to my own path. So wanting to share that contemplation and offering here on this platform. So we'll start off with a guided meditation. I'm actually going to lead us through some movement. I hope that's okay with everyone. And then we'll establish our meditation posture, our seat, and then we'll jump into our shamatha practice. And so we'll be sitting together for about 20 minutes or so, and then we'll regather together again. So starting off, finding yourself comfortable in your seat. If you're in front of furniture, just making sure that you have some room around you to move. So starting off, just extending both your hands to your sides, palms open. And then together, we're just gonna take a deep inhale through your nose. And then an exhale through your mouth. I'll do that one more time. Inhale. And exhale. Together on our next inhale, we're going to lift both our palms towards the sky, like we're holding a big ball of sun. So inhale, lifting up. And then exhale, releasing both arms back towards our sides. One more time, inhale, rising. And exhale, releasing. Placing both your hands, palms down on tops of your thighs. Our next movement will be a simple neck roll. So drawing your chin towards your chest, maybe closing your eyes, relaxing here. And then very gently allowing your right ear to fall to your right shoulder. So a slight movement of your neck, or allowing the full weight of our skull to release. Maybe softening our jaw, relaxing our tongue and teeth. Receiving a deep inhale. And exhale. Inhale. And exhale. Releasing your head back and around, and then allowing your left ear to fall to your left shoulder. So again, releasing the full weight of your skull. Maybe feeling a stretch running along the top of your shoulder, through your neck, running up to your jaw and ear. Inhale. And exhale. Again, inhale. And exhale. Releasing your head back down to center, and then moving through a few neck rolls at your own pace. Feeling any cranks and cracks. And then reversing the rotation. Bringing your head back up to stillness at the top of your spine. And beginning to establish our seat. So whether you're sitting on a cushion right now, or in a chair, or on your couch, or maybe even lying in bed or on the floor, beginning to feel a sense of support, solidity, through the parts of your body that are touching the ground. For me, this is the soles of my feet right now. For you, this may be your shins, or your thighs and butt. And as you rest your bottom part of your body on the ground, maybe feeling a sense of surrendering to gravity, the floor beneath you. Your hands could be palms down on tops of your thighs or in your lap. And then regardless again of what posture you're in, feeling a sense of lengthening through the base of your spine, traveling up just like a trunk of a tree towards the crown of your head, through the sky. Relaxing your belly, softening your ribs. And as your awareness extends up through your chest, feeling a sense of broadening, lengthening through your shoulders and collarbones. An opening of your heart, an availability of space. From here, making sure that you're not necessarily leaning forward or that your neck is protruding out. So slightly tucking of your chin, a readjustment of your spine upward. And then very gently relaxing your jaw, maybe allowing your lips to slightly part open. Relaxing your cheeks, nose and ears. And then you have the option to either close your eyes if you haven't done so already, or keeping your gaze open. Looking about 3 to 4 feet in front of you. Not looking at anything in particular, but as if you're looking through water. Through a clear crystal pond. Softening your eyelids. Relaxing the delicate skin around your eyes. Smoothing out through your eyebrows, forehead, and scalp. Giving our body an opportunity to catch up with our mind. Maybe we've just gone home from work, a long day of commuting or traveling. So giving ourselves a moment at the beginning of our practice to regather, to remind ourselves of the bodies that we walk through our lives with. The small bits and pieces. And then coming home to some type of union with our mind and heart. So as our energy begins to resettle, redistribute through our body, we can begin to draw our awareness to the feeling of our body breathing. Feeling our body breathe in and out. So for some of us, we may feel our breath most prominently at the center of our chest, maybe the back of our throat, or even the tip of our nose. There's no right or wrong way to feel your breath. It's simply about finding a point of stillness to feel where your breath rises for you. Feeling your body breathe in and out. Familiarizing yourself with the cycle of breath. familiarizing yourself the way your body breathes. And if you find that you're no longer with your breath, your awareness is brought away to some train of thought. Kama Trojan likens the technique to a feather lightly touching a balloon. So as your awareness kicks in and notices that you're not with your breath, lightly touching an acknowledgement what brought you away. And then bringing yourself back to feeling your body breathe. Holding ourselves within a cradle of loving kindness as we do so. Holding ourselves with an unconditional sense of friendliness and patience. To come back home to our breath over and over again. Gently letting go of your shamatha practice. Resting on awareness of your body, heart and mind. Dedicating the merits of your practice, cultivating your own loving kindness, your own presence, ability to hold and stay with your own humanity. Towards something, some being, some purpose in your life. Slowly bringing awareness back to your bottom body, to your thighs, butt, and legs and feet. Bringing awareness back to the palms of your hands, wherever they're resting. And then slowly opening your eyes if they were closed. And bringing your awareness back into your space, back to this virtual room. So thank you, everyone, for your practice. Yeah, thank you. Feel free to make any movements, adjustments to your seat. Get comfortable. Have a glass of water or tea, evening. So this evening's theme, Dharma as lifestyle, expanding our path. So at first, when I was coming up with that title, I didn't really know if I should use the word lifestyle, just because I feel like, I mean, for myself, there's like icky, like materialistic, like capitalist connotations, I think, and just like the world we live in, like lifestyle choices, lifestyle. Like it feels like very, very like influence-y, social media-y. Yeah, and I think it also connotates that there's a right lifestyle, that there's a right way to live. So before we jump into it, I just would love to first share a little bit about my own path, expand on what Shante shared when they read my bio. So I first started practicing meditation in college, 2012, as really as a means just to alleviate my own suffering. It was kind of like the last resort of methods or modalities. And for a long time, to be honest, my practice served really as only that. It was really something that I did just so I didn't feel so awful and so anxious and so neurotic. And so I started going to Shambhala Center of New York in Chelsea, started practicing, reading a lot of Dharma books. When I was courageous enough, like practicing at home, like in my dorm room by myself. And then in 2016, wanted to do something to further my studies, and really, other than curriculum within the Shambhala path, within like secular meditation and mindfulness, it's the only real path is like taking a teacher training, unfortunately. So did that in 2016, and then 2018 went off to Karma Choling in Barnet, Vermont, a retreat center to do a program called the Mukpo Institute, which was a 3-month like intensive study retreat program. Yeah, and so my practice within that path really was contained in a silo. My practice consisted of when I went to meditation studios and Dharma centers and on retreat, and in like my private moments at home when I read Dharma books, and like sometimes talked to friends that were interested in meditation and Buddhism. But it almost felt like how I was raised like in my Catholic upbringing, where it's like we went to church every Sunday to remind ourselves of our values, and then like we went home and then forgot about everything. um, yeah, yeah, or like we would go to confession when we know we did something particularly bad and be like, oh, well, okay, well, we did that, like got that over it. I did my Hail Marys, I did my Our Fathers. Yeah, and I always thought like yeah, I never really thought about it outside of that. Like, it was like, oh yeah, meditation is a personal, how I relate to myself, and an interpersonal thing, how do you relate to others, within the realm of like just humans. It's like, am I nice to myself? Do I understand what's going on in my mind and my heart? And how does that impact the way that I relate to other beings and am in relationship with them? And that was really it. I was like, okay, that's it. That's it. And during our last month of Mukpo, this 3-month program, we did something called a Datun, which is just like a month-long silent meditation retreat. And at the beginning of the Datun, they offered the opportunity to take refuge, which your refuge vows, which are like these sets of vows that like make you a Buddhist, traditionally. And I was like, oh, okay, like that, I think I'm ready. Like, this feels right. I'm not gonna tell my parents, but this feels right. And they gave us like a book that was, I think, literally called Datun. And it was a compilation of talks and chapters of different teachers explaining components of it. And I think the second chapter, or like the 5th chapter, was about the precepts. And Pema Chodron wrote it. I think it was like a transcripted talk from like back in the 80s or something. And so I'm reading this chapter and I'm like, does this have to do with that vow we're doing? Like, like, is this? And it was really strange, because I remember at the time they were like, oh, well, you can take your precepts with your refuge vow, but it's like not mandatory, or it's like implicit or understood that once you take refuge, you're also taking the precepts. And so it was just like, wasn't super clear. And I remember being like, oh, well, that's weird that this isn't clear. You're taking a pretty formal vow to something. You should probably know what like it entails as well. And so I kind of just decided for myself that taking refuge also meant taking these precepts. So the 5 precepts are, I mean, on paper, they look like ethical code, like rules, more or less, kind of in the way that you would understand like the 10 Commandments or any type of religious law. Or you can consider them as like the 5 like contemplations or mind trainings. But they're essentially guidelines for conduct or ethical behavior. And it's understood that if you ascribe or identify as a Buddhist, that you also maybe obtain or go by these guidelines as well. And so I decided for myself, oh, I think, I'm just gonna do it all, right? Like, what's the point? And so I had read Pema's chapter, and at first, when you see the precepts, they seem pretty bare bones. The first one is to abstain from killing. You're like, well, okay, cool. I know not to kill beings, take life. The second one is to abstain from stealing. Like, don't take people's things that don't belong to you, right? Third one is to abstain from lying. The fourth one is to abstain from sexual misconduct. And then the 5th one is to abstain from intoxicants, like misuse of like alcohol and drugs. And And so like I had always kind of known the precepts beforehand, but it's always felt like really prescriptive and dogmatic. And so I always kind of like washed over them. I felt like it was like the really religious side of Buddhism, and that wasn't like the Buddhism that, I don't know, that like I wanted to practice or wanted to, yeah, that I wanted to be a part of my path. It felt like the Ten Commandments. You know, like I grew up memorizing them and like reciting them, and they really didn't mean much to me at the end of the day. In the sense that like I knew some basic things of like what I probably shouldn't do. But Pema in her chapter described the first precept, do not kill, as simply as do not harm. Like, do not harm. Like abstain from harming. And for some reason, I don't know if it was because I was like really primed with meditation for a few months, but like my brain like exploded. It was like, oh, this is what these 5 things are really saying. Like all they're really saying is like, try not to like fuck shit up. Like try not to like cause harm to yourself and others. And I mean, lying, stealing, sexual misconduct, you know, drug use, alcohol, those are like very, you know, those are like obvious pathways to possibly causing harm, you know. But they're also restrictive in some ways as to how we view the ways that harm can possibly be caused. And so I really took to heart Pema's, I guess, translation or transmission of the 5 precepts of, you know, at the end of the day, they're really just guidelines to not harm, not cause any suffering, or not perpetuate it in any way. And so once I understood or had that, that view of the precepts, a lot of things changed for me. My like practice and the way that I viewed things changed. It was like a fundamental shift in a lot of ways. And so I came back to New York after those 3 months in Vermont, and just started like being a little bit more curious about like, oh, how can I not harm, just like through my everyday. And then a month later, the sexual abuse allegations in the Shambhala community came out. And it was just like a huge, like, yeah, like a brick in the face, you know? And for some reason, it became like incredibly clear to me very quickly that a lot of, I mean, it's one of the reasons, not all of the reasons, but what I feel like a lot of harm that's done in Western Buddhist communities is from a relationship between the Dharma and then actually an application of its ethics and conduct and behavior that hasn't actually been reconciled in a real way. It's almost like we forgot. And also just on my own path, I feel like beforehand, I had never really, I read like a chapter in a book about ethics, you know, like, teachers would touch upon it. They'd be like, talk about ethics, like here and there, little bits in their talks or in their Dharma talks or in programs. But it was never the focus. Like it was never the focus, it was never the theme. It was never something we actually really unpacked together as a Sangha. It was something that it was just assumed that you'd figure it out on your own, which at the end, which is true in some part, and a huge part, right? Like these is highly personal contemplation. You know, the ethics aren't supposed to be things that like you just throw at people as rules. we're supposed to make it our own in the same way that we make our meditation practice our own. We have to develop a relationship to it. And so I came to this place where it's like, okay, I see what, what's happening here, or what has happened or what hasn't happened. And something needs to change, like something. And I feel like I'm guilty of this, of course, too, right? Like, it's really nice to read these Dharma books or like listen to these Dharma gatherings and hear philosophy about opening your heart and cultivating compassion and dissolving your confusion and neuroses. We can understand these in these like abstract ways, and then we internalize it through meditation practice, right? Like it becomes a part of us. But then, there's all these issues in the world, right? From many places, there's so much harm. There's so many systems that cause harm that we're implicit in as well. But in some ways, as practitioners, we don't take full responsibility. And so starting to think about our practice beyond just like the social justice activism of like the big things that we can change, but like the everyday things we can change. Where our practice doesn't necessarily have to feel like it just happens in silos or is only applied to certain realms of our life. Like I never felt like, I was like, oh, well, I practice mindfulness and like conversation. That's great, wonderful. But then how does it happen on a more like, how does it become the fabric of our lives? Like, that's really the big contemplation that I feel like I've been holding for the past year or so. It's like, how does our practice, through this teaching, of not harming from the 5 precepts, these like ethical conduct guidelines, how do we actually end up applying it to our everyday? How do we apply to our everyday? How do we apply to our like the mundane, like the super mundane choices? And so it's not about necessarily being like, okay, well, I know that plastic is harmful, so I should never use plastic again. I throw all the plastic in my apartment. No, it's this, no. Or like, I know that it's harmful to like, I don't know, like just like eat chocolate. I don't know. Like, there's always a relative and absolute understanding to this, right? But it becomes a place where we can offer our like everyday lifestyle choices, the ones that like how we like, what toothbrush am I brushing my teeth with? Like, what products am I buying when I go to the store? Where am I buying my food from? What am I choosing on the menu? Like, what am I choosing to support with my money through what I'm buying? Like, what am I like, everything. It's really everything. It's the stuff that makes up our lives. The things that we think aren't spiritual, that we think that have nothing to do with our meditation practice, have nothing to do with Buddhism. But like the silly stuff, it's like, oh, where am I buying where's my notebook from? Or like the pen I'm using, like not in an erotic way, like not in a, like you have to be a crazy person and then go through everything that you have to make sure if it's, the best for human rights or the best for the environment or the best for whatever. It's about applying the same type of curiosity that we have in our meditation practice towards our thoughts, towards our emotions, towards everything that goes on during our meditation practice, that same loving, patient curiosity to our actual daily mundane lives. It's like, can I just be curious? Can I be curious about, that maybe something different. Maybe I choose something else, or maybe I don't do that. And so it doesn't become a thing where it's like, oh, it's right or wrong, or this is like the mindful way to live, or like unmindful way to live. But it becomes actually a part of your spiritual path. The line between the curiosity you apply in your meditation practice towards the manifestations of your heart and mind is the same as the actual material systemic things in your life too. And so then everything becomes to feel like a tiny bit more fluid, a tiny bit more cohesive. And that our path isn't singular, but actually much more expansive than we realize. And then what's beautiful about that, it actually reinforces itself. It's like the curiosity that you end up applying in your everyday choices gets to be applied, again, just in your meditation practice. You're like, okay. And it doesn't mean that you get everything right. There's been so many times where, like if I order takeout, and you know when you get you order like pad thai or something, or like just something greasy, and then the plastic container it comes in is just like gross, and you don't want to deal with it, and you're like, oh my God. And they put like the sauce in the little plastic container, and you're like, oh my God, I just want to throw this all out. Like, I don't want to deal with this. The amount of times I've thought that and then thrown it out in the garbage, and then 2 minutes later went back to the garbage and then picked it out and then washed it and then put it in the recycling. It's like too many times to count. And then you have questions of like, oh, do these things even really matter? Like, is my individual like lifestyle change really going to reduce harm? You know? Is it really going to infect the environment? Is it really going to change the capitalist society we live in? Is it really going to do any of these things? And part of me just really thinks that it actually doesn't matter. It actually doesn't matter if it changes things. It's on this like mini level, right? Like it doesn't matter if that piece of recycling that you washed from your miso soup is really going to go to the recycling center. It'd be great if it did. But what's really happening is that you're actually allowing your meditation practice, your mindfulness awareness practice to infiltrate the seemingly things that previously were unimportant or unrelatable. And then, I mean, on a bigger level, like how in the world do you expect to be like writing your representative an email or like a handwritten letter at your kitchen table about the things that we should change on a more macro level? If we're like crushing water bottles at our kitchen table, and throwing them in the garbage. But yeah. And then that's not to say that like, then that means like if you mess up or if you don't have the choice, right? Like a big part of this is like these lifestyle choices and the ability to make a change towards not harming requires a certain level of resource, a certain level of space to even like allow your awareness to kick in, to choose differently. It's very similar to our meditation practice, right? Like the privilege and the luxury to like sit in silence for 20 minutes in the morning. Like what? Huh? Like to even have a spiritual path. To put yourself forward in a way of like, oh, this is a priority. So I think from there we can, once we reconcile this gap, this like broken bridge of a relationship with our spiritual practice, meditation, with the ethics that it actually inherently implies. These teachings on enlightened society, these teachings on actually manifesting on a collective level have some type of chance, like have a real opportunity. Yeah. So I think that's all I have to say, but I'm curious of all your thoughts, if anything came up for you while I was speaking, your own questions, your own contemplations, your own thoughts on this for yourself and how you're considering or maybe trying to think of this everyday lifestyle component of our lives in relationship to our spiritual path as well.
Thank you so much, Adriana. I just want to remind people that you can ask questions in the chat box, or you can turn on your video and ask a question. And I will spotlight you. And questions, sometimes we need to take a moment to process things. And asking questions to the teacher is a form of generosity. So.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me all right? First off, thank you, Adriana. I found myself agreeing with a lot of the things you said, specifically around fractals and like the little things and how to apply your practice during your everyday life, specifically about the plastic and recycling. I don't know that I have any questions. I think the words that resonated with me is like developing the relationship that continues to come up for me in like every aspect of my life, and applying the curiosity. So really getting into that practice of like being curious and out of that guilt or shaming or those other feelings of like creating that space to take the time and just be curious and like ask questions and wonder. And spiritual practice, period. Everybody's journey is different to a spiritual practice. And I think a lot, specifically in this Western world, that we're continuously like presented with all these concepts around like being separate. Like, no, spirituality is separate. Your mind is separate. Your body is separate. So figuring out ways to connect and also to push through, some of your coping mechanisms that you've had when you were young, and like now this defensiveness is coming up and it's, preventing you from growth, and how to take a second to like be curious about that and not say, oh, I need to be doing this or I should be doing that. So those are some of my contemplations, my thoughts that came up while you were speaking. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, V. You actually just reminded me something that I when I was thinking about earlier today, it's like so much of our habitual habits around lifestyle choices, just like the everyday, is like our habits in the same way that our neuroses and discursive thinking are habits. Just habits manifested on a different level, right? So it's just interesting to apply it. You know, we rarely think of like the ways that we like move through the mundane parts of our lives, because they're really just, I mean, it happens within our private spheres, you know, like in the home. There's something actually really intimate about the process of going grocery shopping, or like doing your laundry or making your bed, like these parts of your life that you're never like really sharing with people. You're not like sharing about that stuff when you go to a meditation center. Yeah, but it's interesting to think about it as like just habits that we've learned, and it's not in the same way that the habits that we have in meditation are necessarily bad. It's just seeing what they are and then showing curiosity. Yeah.
Hey, Adri.
Hi, Vic.
Hey! Wow, I really, really, really enjoyed your talk tonight. I'm glad that you can hear me this time. My microphone seems to be working, I hope.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, you know, from the beginning, what you said, you know, that you started your practice just to not be so neurotic. I mean, that's exactly some reason why I had to do it too, because yeah, I mean, our culture is a little backwards, and well, I guess the thing that's helped me with the most my practice is like with being less tolerant of neurosis in general. You know, like not on myself and not from other people. You know, like I used to be like very tolerant of other people's, I guess, you know, bull crap, and I would just let them do whatever they want with me. But something about the practice has really connected me to me, and now I'm like more sensitive to it, and I just like, you know, it's improved my relationships because of that. You know, I've become better at selecting friends, and yeah, chosen family in general because of the practice. I guess that's been for me the like the biggest thing where mindfulness has been helping me out, and yeah, and then it, you know, goes everywhere else. You know, like what you said about the takeout. I mean, it drives me crazy. Plastic in general, I can't stop thinking about it. You know, every time I go to the grocery store and they try to give me a bag automatically, I'm like, no, I have my backpack. Like, I don't need a plastic bag. Things like that. You know, that we're so like, kind of like asleep. We don't think about those things anymore. Mindfulness kind of like really brings stuff to your attention. Like, hey, you know, like you should be a little more involved in politics because like that's important, and like you can have an impact on things actually, you know. So yeah, I mean, that I've definitely resonated with everything you said. From a millennial to another millennial, I think, yeah, we share a lot of these things. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Vic. Yeah, I think what you're describing is like in terms of like just discernment, like you're able to like call things out, like, oh, like no, that's harmful. You know, like whether it be, you know, a person or you know, like a lifestyle thing. But what's so crazy about the plastic bag thing is that, like, I mean, 3 years ago we all took them and we're like, no big deal. Like, and only because it's been brought into our like collective consciousness do we realize, you know. And so, I mean, there's so many other things that aren't, I mean, I don't even know if I can consider the plastic bag thing as like mainstream right now, but there's so many other things that we still move through life without showing curiosity about. Because it's hard. It's hard because we're like swimming through it. like we're swimming through things that we don't necessarily, that we haven't chosen for ourselves. So we're like implicit in harm, whether we realize it or not. Yeah.
Hi, Adriana. Great talk. Thank you
Hi.
so much.
I see.
I don't really have a question, but I have two things that kind of came up for me while you were talking. When you were talking about our relationship with, you know, where we purchase items from, I started thinking about what my relationship with Amazon looked like maybe 2 years ago. And then now, as I get deeper into my practice, and I think before my practice was just very personal and more like, okay, I'm meditating because I'm trying to get through anxiety. But now I'm doing it because I understand the effects that it has on the people around me and just the world around me. So I started looking at my relationship with Amazon, and I'm just like, okay, there are obviously a lot of ethical issues around the company, like in general. But then, like, kind of a smaller scale, it's like you order an item, they ship it to your house, and it's all this packaging. It's like a small box and a big box and another big box, and then just really made me start thinking about just waste. Do I really need to order that one item that's going to cause so much just waste for the world? Like maybe I can just go to the store and like pick it up. So that came up for me. And then another thing that's just kind of when you talk about do no harm. So I could completely understand do no harm in the sense of with another human being. I could understand it in terms of with like eating meat, maybe. But when it came to like insects and bugs, like in my house, I'm like, oh, it's a fly in here, let's kill it, right? So I was. So now it's like my husband and I are sitting there trying to gently guide things out of the house. We don't want to kill it. And we're just trying to like, okay, like if we don't have to kill it, like we won't, let's try to be more peaceful about this. But that's definitely come from just getting deeper into this practice. And it might seem like a small thing to some people, but it's really been a big thing for me and just making me more aware of living things. And, you know, we have to love everything on this earth. So thanks again for the talk.
Yeah, thanks, Gina. I love that you brought up insects because I actually wrote a blog post about exactly that. Like I grew up, learning to just like kill bugs. You just like kill bugs, like gosh, you don't think about it. And I think it was Ethan Nichtern in his book, The Road Home, on the chapter of ethics, talks about like the first precept, like abstaining from harm, like choosing purposely not to cause harm, is like more than just like the physically like don't kill the bug, but it's really a curiosity and contemplation of like the habitual ways that we have aggressive behavior. Actually, it's like, oh, what are like the ways that I mindlessly behave aggressively or like habituate my aggression more or less in small ways like that. And that made a lot of sense for me. I was like, oh yeah, it's like really aggressive that I just like kill bugs and like habitually. Like, what is that about? Like, what are other things that I just like have a ton of aggression in a way that I think is no big deal, but is actually super aggressive. And so, it's what's interesting about it is that these contemplations become like so much more. It's like we begin to like, by seeing how, by choosing different ways of behaving, of just choosing not to cause harm, we get to then work backwards. Like, oh, yeah, we get to, rather than it just simply coming from our cushion, it ends up being this like feedback loop. Yeah, that's awesome. I think it's cool that you guys are trying to save the insect.
If I may add something to that, Adri.
Yeah, Vic.
Real quick, because that's actually really, yeah, I mean, it makes you think about, you know, if I can squish something so easily, then who else and what else I'm harming, you know? But like, you know, you know, my cat usually takes care of bugs here in the house, and I'm so upset at him right now because we have a bunch of flies in the house for some reason, and he's like not killing them, like actively, like he catches them and like just like observes them and then lets them go, and I'm like, it's your job to kill the flies, like that's why I have you here, like. And then I was like, wait a minute, maybe he's become friends with the flies. Can I just let him have that? You know, maybe, you know, yeah, he's reflected upon that. So, I mean, yeah, I kind of cut myself in that, like, come on, you know, just kill the fly already. And then I was like, chill, you know, like animals have compassion too.
Oh, I totally get that. At Karma Trolling, like they have honey at this retreat center I was at. They had like honey next to the coffee, and they'd have all these ants, like ants just crawling up on the honey, up on the coffee. And I remember us being like, this is gross. Like, this is disgusting. Someone should be killing these ants. And no one was killing the ants. And at first it really bothered me. I was like, this is basic like sanitary code. But then afterwards I was like, oh, I get it. I was like, it's kind of beautiful. I actually don't mind the ants now. Yeah, so I feel that.
Thank you so much, Adriana, for your talk. I really appreciate it. And I really appreciate everyone's questions and comments. And I was thinking about habitual patterns. You know, thank you for talking about ethics. And I was thinking about bugs, and there's a lot of different ways to think about this. You see Buddhists kill bugs, and then they say, you know, may you be reincarnated, and, you know, whatever. Like mosquitoes have actually, some bugs carry diseases that are actually whatever. So I think that we can be gentle with ourselves and our habitual patterns and our reactions, but also curious. But I was thinking a lot about a point you sort of mentioned briefly, but poignantly, which is this kind of gloss over and maybe even resistance to ethics. And frankly, even resistance to thinking about the karmic patterns that organizations and nations have, and not kind of dealing with that on a very fundamental level, like ignoring that, and that actually being really, like, to go back to the bug metaphor, really being like a foundation that's infested with termites, right? And so if you have a foundation infested with termites, you actually have to get rid of the termites and build a foundation that's free of that. So I really thank you for making me think about reminding me that inside of the very first vow you take in Buddhism, and there are more and more you can take, that there's a kind of call to like reflect on what we've been doing, you know, the ways we cause and perpetuate suffering. And I do think because many non-Asian Western Buddhists are converts, there's a kind of like, oh, Buddhism is free from all that stuff that tells us do this and do that. And I think the difference with Buddhism is that the ethics aren't, they're contemplations, as you said, but they're there. There's so much ethical conduct. I remember this when I was on retreat, and I was reading this version of the story of Buddha Shakyamuni, and I think it was Ananda said to him how they came to have a yarne, which was like a long retreat during the monsoon season. Was Ananda was like, oh yeah, you Buddha, you think you're so cool, but we're walking and we're stepping on ants. And Buddha was like, oh shit, you're right. Okay, my dude. We're just gonna stay here and have retreat until it's not the wet season anymore. And so I think like this gentle reminder that it's not, you know, that it can like spread. And I really resonated this morning when I was practicing the the theme for the calendar, we have a practice, anyway, there's a practice calendar, and it says abandon any hope of fruition, which is a Lojong slogan. And like you were saying, I do think the little things I do matter. They matter to me, you know, and I have to abandon any hope that I'm going to be the hero of climate change, or the hero of ending anti-Blackness, or the hero of ending trans antagonism, or the hero of ending whatever, but that I still do the thing, and I abandon the hope of any for it. I abandon hope of heroism. I abandon hope of an ideal outcome, but I do it nonetheless. I think that's a very hard thing to do. It is a hard thing to do. And so I really appreciate you bringing this to us, and just helping me to like infuse that even more. You really so brilliantly reminded me and taught me. So I really appreciate this very beautiful and gentle and tough talk on ethics. So I wanted to say thank you. I do actually have a question. Is what brought you to this topic?
I mean, really just my own contemplation with it. I feel like most of my spiritual practice over the past year has been trying to understand my spiritual practice in the context of my everyday life and in lifestyle choices. Yeah, I have a blog, Seeds of Karma, as Shantae mentioned, and I mean, I've taken quite a pause from it for the past few months, but the intention behind Seeds of Karma was it's like really sharing how people live their values. Like Vic was actually featured on Seeds of Karma. But the idea of it's like, we all have these values. We all like have something we believe in, kind of something, you know? But like, what does that really look like? Like what like bullshit are we actually saying if we don't actually practice it within like the material, like earthly world we live in? And that means like being a consumer and being like on the internet and being like ordering things off Amazon. Because sometimes it's just a little bit more convenient, and like our mental sanity is like worth a 24-hour delivery, you know? Yeah, so I just feel like that's like really the contemplation of my spiritual path right now, is like putting my money where my mouth is and just figuring out in this context, like putting the Dharma where my mouth, you know, is. And not it being about materialism or like spiritual materialism or like capitalism, consumerism. Because I feel like there's a lot of like greenwashing, like eco, like, ooh, like, where's your like bamboo straw? And like it's great. Like, get your bamboo straw, but like get it and actually use it. So, you know, like I'm not down for, yeah, that's it. Like, I'm not down for it any other way, really. It's like, if you're gonna engage genuinely and have it really be part of your path. I actually think yeah, and that means it's like forgetting it sometimes, maybe the bamboo straw or whatever it is. Yeah, but just it being part of the intention, it being a part of your spiritual intention and practice off the cushion.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So we're at 8:15, unless anyone else has any. I would like to just thank Adriana and thank you all for joining us for tonight's weekly Dharma gathering. Please join us, and I'll put this in the chat box. Please join us next week for Karma Lodro Gendin's talk. Which is, hold on, sorry, multiple screens here. which is titled "The Past and Future Are Present." Ooh, okay. And it will be, you can find more details in the link. For those of you who are joining us recorded, you can go to weeklydharmagathering.com. You can also follow us on Instagram, on the internets at Weekly Dharma. And you can also follow us on Instagram's parent company, Facebook, at Weekly Dharma Gathering. Talk about a ethical choice that many of us make. We're here every week, or mostly every week, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time live, and this recording should be up in between 24 and 48 hours, so you can access it. And I'll turn it back over to you, Adriana. Do you have anything else you'd like to add? Oops. Where'd you go? Oh, there you are.
Yeah, I just like to thank everyone who joined live again today, who shared. Shantae for inviting me to lead one of these. It's my first real Dharma talk, y'all. Yeah, and I just encourage all of us to like hold this contemplation with us as we go about, you know, our everyday. When you go to the bathroom after this, or have a drink of water, like have it all be a part of your practice. Yeah, I'd love to hear what changes or what doesn't change, or how that is for you. But yeah, thank you so much again. Thank you for being part of this community, this growing community. Tell all your friends about it. And we'll see you soon. Yeah, thank you again.
Thank you all. Have a great night.